Hi, everyone. My name is Chantal. I'm the Director of Membership Services at St. Joseph Media. It's nice to have you all here, and thank you for joining us today for virtual wine tasting masterclass with John Torrens, TL Insider's Sommelier in Residence for the month. Torrens will equip you all with the knowledge and tools that will allow you to bring the wine pairing experience of a fine dining restaurant into your homes. John Torrens is the head sommelier at Hexagon Restaurant in Oakville. You can find John on a nightly basis pouring plenty of bubbly and suggesting that perfect beverage pairing to match your dish. Now, here are some quick housekeeping rules. Please make sure to keep your mics muted during the class, but feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat box at the bottom of your screen along the way. Now, thank you so much for your time today, John, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Chantal, for introducing me. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure having you guys in our masterclass today, and hopefully you can take some tips from what I share my knowledge with you and take it home with you, and it'll be great. So just to get started with, I guess, who I am, a bit of background on me. Like Chantal mentioned, I work at Hexagon. I've been here since the beginning, about 3 years now we've been open, and I was certified officially through the Court of Masters in 2018, and I took on the role of sommelier at Hexagon at the same time. So I'm responsible for the wine list here and curating that. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And the guests here have been amazing. And for us, like, to be able to still be open is a big blessing for us. And we would like to thank the healthcare workers, of course, and everyone working to fight against COVID. And I know the restaurant scene right now, it's not the most positive message out there, but on our end, we're doing very, very well. And we're very happy to be offer you a little welcome cocktail just to kind of get things started. So what we make at the restaurant here is a very classic cocktail. It's called a French 75. I'd like to offer it a bit of a twist on it. This is Calvados in apple brandy. It's a very simple cocktail, the French 75. It's equal parts, 1 ounce of Calvados, 1 ounce of a simple syrup, equal parts sugar and water, and 1 ounce of lemon juice. Just combine the ingredients and then add some ice into a cocktail shaker, and then shake for about 20 to 30 seconds. I'll just strain into the glass here. And then top the cocktail with your favorite bottle of sparkling wine, whatever you have available in the fridge. This is a nice Prosecco. And then the last little piece is orange garnish, just a little peel. And that's a very kind of simple welcome cocktail for you to make at home. Cheers. So to get started, I know Chantal mentioned I'd like to bring the wine pairing experience of a fine dining restaurant home to you. So I'll give you a few tips to help you execute that when you're at home. One of the big things for a lot of people I know is they often open up maybe 1 bottle of wine for the night, and there's no real progression. They only open up like that 1 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, that 1 bottle of Chardonnay, and that's what you have for everything you eat in the night. And it's nice to have that progression sometimes where you start out with maybe a glass of champagne as an aperitif, or maybe like a white wine or something like a full-bodied red more towards the end of the meal. And then maybe afterwards like a digestivo if you're going to be having a lot of different types of wine. One thing that might be able to help you with this, if you don't want to have a lot of bottles open and then have them all go bad after a little while, this is called a Coravin. And what it allows you to do is to extend the shelf life of your bottles. So if you have if you wanted to have a bottle of like white, red, and rosé open at the same time to have that flexibility with wine pairing at home, you can use this to help you. So what it allows you to do is extend the shelf life for up to 3 months after you pierce the cork with the needle here. So it's very simple. What you do is just press this top down, and the needle here will slightly pierce the cork, but not allow too much oxygen to get into the wine and spoil it. So maybe you can offer that as maybe a Christmas gift for your loved one at home if you want to buy it for them. But I think it's a nice little handy tool to have around the house if you wanted to have multiple bottles open so you can pour different types of wine for your guests. In addition, we'll talk about temperature as well, which is a big part of what we do at the restaurant. Trying to keep your red wines chilled to a proper temperature of around 14, 18 degrees Celsius. Having your reds in the fridge before you open them, and having that extra little detail makes a big difference. And for me at the restaurant, having the temperature be a key factor is great for the overall experience, because you don't want to have your reds too room temperature and your whites too cold. So finding that balance is very, very important. Another little tip for at home. Let's say you had your guests over and you forgot to put that bottle of wine in the fridge, and you needed to have a very fast way of getting a bottle cold. So if you had, let's say, a bottle of Chardonnay that you didn't put in the fridge and you need to get it cold in like about a half an hour very quickly, a good tip is actually to add about a couple tablespoons of salt to a bucket of ice. And what it'll actually do is lower the freezing temperature of the water and allow you to get the bottle as cold as quickly as possible. So just to demonstrate, you'll take the bottle and tuck it in the ice and kind of rotate it a bit, just so you can get the wine chilled as fast as possible. And if you come back to it every so often, and the salt will actually help you get the wine cooler as fast as possible, like I mentioned. So that's another great tip for home use. And then also with proper stemware. So like my cocktail here in this beautiful coupe glass we have at the restaurant. Something for you to consider at home is what glass to put with the right wine. So for example, this is a beautiful champagne coupe, which is almost like the best of both worlds between our regular coupe that we have at the restaurant and a flute. And there's benefits to having all types of glassware for sparkling wine. But for me, the best balancing of both worlds is this. You still get the bubbles that are going to be trapped because it's not so wide, but you get all the aromatics of the sparkling wine as well, which is what you want. For if you're going to invest in a beautiful champagne, you want to smell all the aromatics and also capture the bubbles at the same time. So this glassware is awesome for that. And then also for pouring white and red wine, we have this wine glass at the restaurant. It's called a Pinot Noir glass, or a Riedel Sommelier series glass. It has these beautiful curved edges to allow you to express the wine's aromatics in the most pleasing way possible. And yeah, it's great. Last point I'll mention is also decanting. So in addition to having that beautiful bottle of red you want to serve to your guests and impress them, maybe it's an older vintage, maybe it's a wine you want to impress people with, I'll kind of run through some tips about how to decant wine properly. So I'll show you what we have here at the restaurant. This is a bottle of 2009 Grand Cru Bordeaux, which is a very special bottle. It's an occasion wine. It's a celebratory wine. And what I often tell my guests is when you're decanting wine, to pour it over top of a candle so you can see the sediment being trapped in the neck of the bottle. And I'd be happy to demonstrate for you if you'd like. So anyone that likes to ask any questions so far is, I'll open it up. So again, we're just gonna check the integrity of the cork as well to make sure it's all intact. It's just like it's okay. You can smell it as well. But again, the key part is using the candle to be able to see the wine flowing into the decanter. And that way you'll be capturing the sediment in the neck of the bottle and you won't get it in the decanter. And the key point of decanting is to allow oxygen to enter the wine, and then it'll change the aromatic experience of the bottle as well. I don't know if you can see it on camera because it might be a little too tight, but there's a bit of sediment kind of like hanging in there. Maybe you can't see it, but once you have the wine decanted, you can leave it open for about 45 minutes to 50 minutes before your guests arrive. So again, just to reflect on what I mentioned so far. So we want to have a progression at home of having the multiple styles of wine to be able to pour your guests, and having the Corvin will allow you to do that at home. And then also having the temperature, so chilling your wine down at home with salt is a great tip if you're in a rush. And then also proper stemware for having your whites in a certain glass, having your sparkling in a beautiful glass as well. And also making sure that you don't pour too much wine in the glass as well. That's another key factor, because I see a lot of people at home, they'll just take a whole bottle and they'll just dump it in the glass, which is obviously right for certain occasions. But if you're trying to be a little more tasteful and have a bit better of an experience, you can pour about 3 ounces is great. So now I'll move on to some wines I'd love to feature for you as well. I have 5 wines in total that I'll kind of discuss and talk about the different types. So the first wine I'll feature here is a beautiful, it's called Petit Naturelon, or Pet Nat for a short form. This comes from Trail Estates in Prince Edward County. And I had the pleasure of traveling to Prince Edward County this past summer, and got to try a lot of interesting wines. And you'll hear a lot of hipster sommeliers discuss the benefits of having a Pet Nat on their menu, because it's a interesting, funky, natural wine that a lot of guests are into right now. So it's a great kind of first impression for the guests at the restaurant, and it's a cool thing to add to a menu. So I'll have a question here from Jamie. Hi, Jamie. Thanks for popping onto the masterclass here. Question is, where would you include a cocktail in the progression for a dinner party? It's a great question. Usually it's the first thing you start with. So as an aperitif, like I said, for my first cocktail, it's a great kind of first impression. It stimulates your appetite. There's lots of acidity in there as well. It should make you, ready to eat, especially when there's finger food around. To have that champagne is nice to kind of cleanse your palate. Especially at a dinner party, it's kind of my go-to for a welcome cocktail. So kind of to pick up off that point, again with the Pet Nat, if you want to have guests that are interested in a more funky or a different style of wine, I would definitely be on the lookout for this. And the primary difference between what a Pet Nat is versus a champagne or a Prosecco is that the primary fermentation is in the bottle first. So champagne undergoes a secondary fermentation in the bottle, but Pet Nat is the first fermentation in the bottle only. So it's a bit of a small difference, but it comes across in the flavor profile of the wine. So again, moving on to the next wine, I want to make the case for having rosé all year round. I know a lot of people love to drink rosé in the summertime, but this is a beautiful wine that can be had all year round. This is from Domaine Qualis, which is a small producer in Beamsville in Niagara, in the Niagara region. It's made from Pinot Noir. It's a very young wine, 2019. But it's a wine that you can pair with a lot of different types of foods. You can have it with roast chicken. You can have it with a beautiful light salad. It's very crisp. It's got a lot of minerality as well. But for me, when winemaking is very serious and there's a lot of quality involved, you can serve rosés all year round. It's not just the wine you can have on the patio in the summer, although it's great to have it. But for me, having it as an all year round wine is very important. Probably my most common request at the restaurant for a wine by the glass is always Chardonnay. People always want to know, what's your most buttery, oaky Chardonnay that I can serve to it at the restaurant? And oftentimes it's not my preferred style of wine, but definitely is one of our most recommended wines. So I'll give you kind of an option here so you can have it home. This is from Ferox. It's a relatively new producer on the scene in Niagara. It's kind of down the street from Big Head, near the lakeshore. But their winemaking philosophy is all about elegance and finesse. And for me, that's a great philosophy to have for Chardonnay because it's such a neutral grape variety. Oftentimes, the winemaker does have a lot of influence on the wine. And this one in particular, it's a blend. They call it vintages. So Ferox Chardonnay vintages, for those who want to write down the name. It's actually a blend of 3 different vintages. So 2017, 2016, and 2019. So it's kind of a unique product in that it's a blend. So you're getting that beautiful oaky, buttery notes, but it's not going to be overwhelming. It's a little more balanced. And for me, that's the best pairing with wine and food because sometimes the oak can get in the way and it's a little kind of hard on your palate. So I prefer this style of Chardonnay, and hopefully you do at home too. So now I'll mention to you as well, there's another red I'd like to show you. It's another often requested wine is a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon. So people always ask, do you have a Cabernet by the glass? And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but it is a wine that we must have on our menu because of the demand for it. Back to my original point about temperature, this is kind of a key factor as well to keep your red wines in the fridge before your guests arrive. So having them stored at around 14, 18 degrees, or just having it in the fridge about a half an hour before your guests come is a great tip. And also, in terms of value, this is probably my favorite wine because it is a blended wine from some of the best appellations in all of California, from Napa Valley, from Carneros. But it's called Submission. 2017, you can find it at the LCBO for less than $20 a bottle. It's $19.95 at the LCBO. So again, high quality winemaking, not too much oak. You get those beautiful cassis and blackberry notes that a classic classic Cabernet has in California. But again, it's not too much. It's not in your face. It's really balanced, and it really makes for a nice kind of everyday wine to have in your fridge. And one of my personal favorite wines as well, I kind of mentioned it in my Q&A article. It's a beautiful Sauternes, 2016 from Haute Bergeron. Again, great value here as well. This is $33 at the LCBO. Most of my wines are actually available in the LCBO as well for those looking to purchase at home. For me, Sauternes is a very, its reputation is often kind of misguided as being often too sweet and only to pair with dessert or cheese, but you can really have Sauternes with a lot of different types of food. It really balances out like spicier foods. So if you're having like a curry at home, if you're having something with a lot more spice influence, to me, it works really, really well to contrast that spice with the sweetness of the wine. But Sauternes, for me, is very special because it has the acidity to help back up the sweetness. So it actually is a little more balanced than some wise wines I've had in Niagara. Some that can be really cloying and a bit too much for me in terms of the sugar content. But this particular Sauternes from Haute Bergeron strikes that nice balance between sugar and acidity. So it really works well with, like I said, spicy food, or even, like I said, wine and cheese is often a very classic pairing too. Or if you have foie gras like we do at the restaurant, it's one of my favorites. So, and then I wanted to throw a spirit into the mix as well. So I started off with the Calvados there from Boulard, which you can find at the LCBO as well. This is something very unique, and it's very much a small producer mentality focused on quality, low intervention, and it's very natural. This is a mezcal. For those who don't know the difference between mezcal and tequila, tequila is made from only the blue agave plant, and mezcal is made from only other types of agave plants as well. And it comes with a this really cool QR code scan on the side, which gives you the information as to how the master grows his agave plants and where it comes from, its location, all the information about the mezcal. This particular mezcal is called Professor Mezcal, and the professor that actually grows the mezcal and harvests it is also giving back to the community where his schools are. So it's kind of a neat story as well. And it's a very much a natural product. There's no sulfites, there's no preservatives into the mezcal. It's all natural. There's basically just two ingredients, just mezcal and beautiful mountain water. So it's a very unique product in that it's so small production. Only 15 restaurants in Toronto have this product, so we're very lucky to have it. It also makes for a great addition to your Negronis if you want to have it as an aperitif or after your meal as well. Just swap out the gin for the mezcal. It makes a great cocktail. So again, I'll open it up to some more questions. Does everyone have any comments on what I've said so far? I also will feature, again, and Jason commented here on, I'll have the wines in the Toronto Life storefront, so you'll be able to purchase them at home, and you'll have the links as well. Thanks, Linda. So the Sauternes is from Haute Bergeron. It's 2016. So Chateau, Hautbergeron, Haute Bergeron. Again, you can find it in the LCBO for around $33. It's great value as well, because some Sauternes can get very expensive. I'll take another question here from Jason. The best practice when pairing a red wine with food. oftentimes you pair it with steak, of course, as you mentioned in the comment. What's a go-to wine for steak night? So I'll kind of go back to my featured wine here, the Submission Cabernet. With steak, you really want to have something to kind of match those big bold flavors of something being grilled. If you're going to grill it, of course, but if you're going to baste it in butter as well, or brown butter and garlic, it needs a full-bodied wine with a lot of tannin and structure to match the fat of the beef. So for me, this wine kind of strikes that nice balance of being, very high tannin and a lot of darker fruits, a lot of intensity as well. That's the kind of style of wine you want to pair with steak, is dark, intense, a lot of character behind it. It's not going to be too thin like a Pinot Noir to have a steak. Hope that answers your question. The conundrum, I haven't had too much experience with that particular wine, but I know another favorite of mine would be, I know my dad drinks a lot of Kendall Jackson and J-Lore, but those are wines you can find all over the place and they're very much available. But the Submission for me was different because it's an agent who actually buys the wine and buys the grapes and blends the wines themselves. It's with Halpern. So Halpern is known to be one of the larger agents in Toronto for selling wines to restaurants. And for me to have their quality philosophy behind what they do, it kind of reflects in the wine. So for me, at less than $20 a bottle, it's a great buy, and it's a steal. In fact, usually inventory is sometimes in and out, but for right now, 2017 here. So a great question here from the Ben Moore Family Law Group about what red grape blends go well with salmon. So I'll use this wine as an example. This is a rosé that you can pair with salmon. Salmon, like I mentioned, with steak has a lot of fat, but it also is a lighter style fish. It's not something that's going to be too heavy. So you want something that's nice and balanced to kind of match those flavors. It depends on how you're cooking the salmon, if you're going to be like pan searing it or poaching it perhaps. But usually this rosé is pretty flexible to go with salmon. So it is from a red grape. It's from Pinot Noir. So you're going to get those tannins and structure to match the salmon. But also it's going to be light enough to not overpower it. Like some reds would be too much oak or too much tannin to kind of wash away the salmon. It won't be a great fit. But I find that the rosés often are a bit better of a match, and they'll kind of work together versus kind of fighting each other. Another question here from Abby. At a dinner party, do you recommend serving every guest the same wine for each course, or offer them a few different wines throughout the meal, let them choose their preference? So at the restaurant, we love to personalize service. So anytime you're able to allow guests to choose their preference for wine is always the best idea. But if you don't have the flexibility for that, you can always pour 3 wines that, 1, 2, 3 for each course, or 1 wine for the first course, 1 wine for the second course, and then 1 wine for the third course. It'll make your job a little bit easier. But if you have a smaller group and you want to have that flexibility, you can always just kind of tailor the wine preferences to what your guests would like to have. And like I said, the Corbin will definitely help with that, because having the shelf life extended, let's say you're going to be hosting a lot of parties or events, responsibly, of course, and distanced over the course of December. If you're going to know you're going to be having a lot of events and you want to have a couple bottles of wine open just so you can have that flexibility, the Corbin will allow you to do that and have the wines open for a few months. I think it's a great tip for you at home. Great question, Jason, about decanting. For me, the best option with decanting is, like I said, it allows oxygen to get into the wine. So the longer it decants, obviously the better off it's going to be for the experience of the wine. But if you have a special bottle, for me, it's best to do it about 45 minutes to 50 minutes or about an hour before your guests arrive. You'll find that your aromatics will change. It'll get bigger and more ripe, and they'll come to the forefront a bit better. If you first open the bottle and you smell it, come back to it in about 50 minutes, you'll notice that the aromatics are much more intense, much more present. And that's just because of simply of oxygen getting into the wine. It makes a big difference. But if you follow that guideline, you should be pretty much set. But again, be careful with sediment in the bottle. If you have an older age Barolo or Brunello, it's often nice to have the candle so you can see the sediment in the neck of the bottle and it doesn't go into your decanter. So for which wines to decant, thanks, Parv, for the question. for decanting wines, usually age is the primary factor. So usually a wine that's often a decade old or that needs to have some air in it because it's been in bottle for so long will benefit from decanting. But you can even decant some high-end champagnes in the decanter as well. Some of them would benefit from oxygen. And frankly, all wines could benefit from being decanted. But for everyday drinking wine, you don't really have to have the decanter for that process because it will naturally decant in the glass. But for those special bottles that you've been aging for a long time in your cellar, definitely I would decant those. Like I said, 10, 15, 20 years old, they need some oxygen. They need to be in the decanter to help with the overall experience of the bottle. Kind of a funny story. There's a question here from Jamie to accelerate the decanting process. I've heard some people at home will actually take a Vitamix and blend the wine to actually, speed up the process of decanting. And I don't know if this actually works, and I haven't tried it at home, but it would make for a funny experiment for sure. I'm not suggesting you try it, but definitely I would say to accelerate the decanting process, you could use this decanter, but you can actually, if you just rotate the wine in the decanter, just to kind of get some oxygen into it, will also help as well. Basically, just kind of stirring the wine and creating that vortex to allow as much oxygen into the wine as possible. But you can find decanters of various shapes and sizes. That one from Riddell is quite reasonable, but also we have a larger one as well for maybe if you're trying to fit more than one bottle into a glass, into a decanter, sorry. So it's a bit larger. You'll see very fancy ones at some restaurants that have like a swan shape to them, but basically the primary factor is just to get oxygen into the wine. The way they're designed, it's just more for show. Is there anything else that anyone like to ask, or? Thanks, Jason, for the question. It's regarding stemware. So I would say if you're thinking about investing some money in glassware for wines, I think it is a great investment if you really are interested in drinking high quality wine, because it will make a difference in the experience of the tasting. Just kind of give you an example. If you think about having, like, let's say wine in this glass versus, let's say, a more straightforward glass, like for example, the experience, you wouldn't do this at home, but having it in a rocks glass, which has very short sides, or a beautiful kind of curved wine glass. So some people will just casually kind of pour wine into like a red solo cup or anything like very simple and just kind of drink it as is. Great, you can still do it with that and it's going to be fine. But for me, a beautiful wine glass allows your nose to pick up different aromatics based on where you put your nose in the glass. So if you're just kind of hovering over top like this, you're going to get different aromatics versus when you kind of stick your nose into the glass and you take a deep breath and you smell the wine, and the sensorial experience is much better in a glass that is designed to drink from versus just the regular glass you pick up off the shelf. So for me, it makes a big difference. A good Sauvignon Blanc, that's a great question, Linda. I know that's one of your favorites at the restaurant. Let me see what I have available in the fridge to show you. This one you can probably find in the LCBO as well. A Sancerre recommendation, that would be great. This is from Duc de Tartan, 2018 Sancerre, or 17, excuse me. For those who don't know where Sancerre comes from the Loire Valley in France. It's a very, very beautiful part of France. It makes some very high quality Sauvignon Blanc that's very grassy, a lot of minerality to it as well. And it's a great pairing with oysters. If you have oysters at home or anything crisp, like a vegetal dish, like a salad would be great with it as well. For me, Sancerre is one of my favorites at the restaurant because it's very flexible. You can pair it with a lot of different types of foods, especially at the beginning of a tasting menu. And kind of back to the other question about how to progress if you wanted to have different types of wines for different guests, I would say having a Sancerre available for someone who likes those crisp whites is a great kind of flexible food pairing and wine pairing option. A dry champagne that I recommend is it's from Victoire in the LCBO. It's actually right next door to Perrier-Jouët in Epernay. It's a small region in Champagne. But in terms of its dryness, it is very, very dry, and it's meant to be an aperitif style champagne. So like I said before, it's a nice kind of way to introduce your guests to the dining experience because it allows them to have salivate and want to have something to eat. It really makes your mouth water to have a beautiful champagne, and that dryness will definitely help with that. But for me, a Victoire is a great option for champagne. It's very reasonably priced as well. Victoire, sorry, Sarah. Victoire, so as it sounds, Victoire. So Victoire. And you should be able to find that in the LCBO, no problem. Hey, Malik. The shape of the decanter, the shape of it really doesn't make a huge difference in the experience of the decanting process, but the wide bottom ones are nice to have because it does kind of channel the air into the decanter the most efficient way possible. So having a wide base definitely helps with that process. Small one is kind of reasonable to have at home too. And then Linda, for the Sancerre, I'll spell it out for you. It's Duc de Tartan, so DUC, DE, and then TARENTE, Duc de Tartan. Again, Sauvignon Blanc, great. It is delicious. Got it there. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it. So I hope everyone's been able to come to the restaurant at some point in the 3 years that we've been open. But again, I'll kind of go back to how thankful we are that we're able to still be open and do what we love to do, because I know the picture right now for restaurants in the city is not the best, but we're very positive about our summer, and it's been great. So for us, we've been very busy, and having a lot of guests here has been great, and we're very happy for the support. Question here from the Bernard family again. They bought a case from Australia, but the COVID restrictions, it got stuck in transit. Looks like it got stuck in a garage. So depends on if the garage is in somewhere hot. If it gets very humid in the garage, it could be a damaging factor to your wine. It will definitely age it rapidly and perhaps spoil the wine. So I would definitely check in and see where the garage is located. If it's in a dark and kind of a cooler temperature, it's much better for the wine to be stored there. But if it's out in the open, like in the sun, it could be a concern as well. So I would definitely look into it. Thanks for the support, Linda. We appreciate it. Hopefully that case in Australia, you can maybe get it back after the COVID restrictions ease up. But definitely having that case in transit would be much better than having it stored in a place that would be unsafe for it to be stored. So from Miss Langdon here, any great Cabernet Francs in Niagara that I could recommend on our wine list? I mean, for me, Cab Franc is a great grape as well for a nice crisp fall red. Some great Cab Francs you can find at Two Sisters in Niagara. It's a great producer as well, focused on quality. Their Cab Franc is excellent as well. It has a lot of green notes. A lot of sommeliers will call it pyrazines, but for me, it kind of has those bell pepper, like very much kind of greener, underripe fruit characteristics, which is kind of a nice contrast to some Cabernet Sauvignons that are a little more overripe. But a great Cabernet Franc from Two Sisters is great, or from Domaine Quelis as well, or any other high quality producers. They'll make great wine in any vintage, but those in particular are my personal favorites. From Abby here, any suggestions on how to get the wines you've enjoyed out of province that the LCBO doesn't have? So what you can do these days, a lot of restaurants will actually open their own bottle shops. So it's a great kind of rule that the LCBO has allowed us to have, or a lot of restaurants to have. And since COVID began, they've allowed us to sell our wine directly to consumers, which is a huge benefit to us. And that's definitely a process you can go through. So you can visit these restaurants and they'll likely sell you bottles through their bottle shop license, which is great. So that could definitely be an option for you, or you can order them online, of course. Question here, just a comment that the wines will be up later this week. I know it's a lot of information being thrown at you, but I hope that we can post a link on the storefront and you can be able to purchase the wines from the LCBO or from the winery directly. Maybe I'll reflect back on the names of each wine so everyone can kind of take it, and I'll go a bit slowly for you. So again, this is the first one I mentioned, the Pet Nat or Petit Nat Trelon from Trail Estate in Prince Edward County. We have the Rosé from Domaine Quaylis in Beamsville from 100% Pinot 2019 vintage. We have the Chardonnay, the Oak Chardonnay from Ferox, the blend, the vintages product. So again, beautiful oak integration here. We have the lovely red from Submission, the Napa Valley, California style Cabernet. 2017, the vintage here in the LCBO for 1995. And then the Sauterne I mentioned to you from Haute Bergeron, 2016. And the Calvados that was featured in the welcome cocktail, the French 75, is from Boulard, B-O-U-L-A-R-D. It's an apple brandy, so it's distilled using apples, which is a nice kind of fall cocktail for you to feature at home. And then we have the small organic producer from Professor Mescal, which we have the restaurant and guests seem to love in Negronis. So hopefully that helps kind of make it clear for you. Any Petit Syrah? I've had a Petit Syrah recently. I forget the name of it. Maybe I can look it up for you. Syrah is one of my favorite grapes, actually. It's a unique style of wine because it really has those kind of dirty, earthy notes that really work well with certain types of foods. Syrah is a great grape from the Northern Rhone, and it makes for a great pairing with Jason, you mentioned steak. A beautiful Syrah would be excellent with that. Something smoky. It has those charred flavors in the wine as well, so it really will work well with the steak. But specifically some producers, maybe I can look up one out for you. Question here from Chantel about pairing wines with dessert. For me, wines that are often sweeter than the dessert often work best, because if the dessert is sweet and the wine's sweeter, it often leaves your palate a bit fatigued, and a little too much sugar is never a great thing with wine pairings. So specifically which wines will pair, you can pair a Sauterne with dessert. It's not too sweet. Oftentimes a beautiful off-dry Riesling, so a Riesling with a bit of sugar is a nice kind of contrast to some desserts. If you're having, let's say, chocolate at home, a very classic combination with darker chocolates is port. So a nice 10-year aged tawny port is beautiful as well with that. And also even cocktails, like I mentioned, the mezcal. As a digestif, perhaps with a chocolate dessert, you can pair a mezcal Negroni would be a nice match as well, for those interested in trying a cocktail with dessert as well. Or maybe just the mezcal on its own. So great question here, which is becoming a more popular request of the restaurant, is pairing wines or specific grapes with plant-based meals. So that's a great question. I love it because this kind of fits in with more of the discussion about the natural wine movement and the pet nat that I kind of led off with. So a lot of sommeliers now are interested in these kind of more funky, different style of wines to kind of pair with a lot of different types of foods. And a lot of the times they make great contrasting flavors with vegan options, because a lot of vegetables kind of have a different flavor profile than most kind of like protein focused dishes. So the contrast there is very nice. If you can find a kind of a funkier natural wine, it kind of works well with plant-based food. For me, whites are usually the best option with certain kind of grains and plant-based meals that are focused on specifically grains. Like the beautiful Sancerre would be nice with anything kind of with herbs in it, or anything that has that kind of grassy note to it. Or even a lighter style red would be nice as well, like perhaps a Pinot Noir from Burgundy, or that would be a great option for certain plant-based meals. But for me, having that option of having the natural wine with a bit of funk or a bit of character to it works well with plant-based meals.
Well, this was amazing, John. Thank you so much for your time today. This was super helpful and very educational. So anyone
My
that's
pleasure.
looking to have access to these wines, as you mentioned, we'll share a link with everyone who attended this event tonight within the next couple days. So we'll share a link. We'll send an email out with, we'll record this event right now. So you'll be able to rewatch it if you missed any information. And we'll send you the links directly to our Runner store for free delivery. Runner also delivers, if you're not aware, for same-day delivery from the LCBO. So be sure to look out for our email within the next couple days. So thank you, John, again, and have a great
My
evening,
pleasure.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Have a great night.
You too.